We are back again. The Mo Sangha is here, and the YouTube Sangha is there. Hello. I hope you'll enjoy another text exploration with us. This is the Aro Yeshe Jungne, and of course, we've already gone through the highest of the high, kind of practitioners that have been doing a lot of meditation, lots of mantras, maybe have a pretty deep foot into the Dharma game. And some people are brand new. They can come into it brand new and be really ready for it. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have decades of experience. Being the highest capacity means that your causes and conditions, your present disposition is ripe. Of course, we don't say one apple is better than the other because one isn't ripe yet. So I encourage everybody not to look at this as a kind of hierarchical standard. All right, so we were exploring the senses and something that we do in this group, which is kind of radical and I'd say unique from what I've seen out there, is that we incorporate the whole world into our meditation. So if you can, leaving the eyes open during the 10-minute sits, um, not encouraging, but being okay with awkward feelings, um, all kinds of feelings on the human spectrum that we may normally run from or try to suppress, whether it's feelings of agitation, sexual arousal, um, anger, and rage. These are things that we want to allow and be okay with our human experience. And at the Dzogchen level, there's a maturity kind of expected there because it's your skillful means how you're going to be okay with that. You don't want to hurt other beings. That's a big thing. When we get very self-absorbed, we tend to be very unkind without really knowing it. And so if we can skillfully be with our human experience and ditch the stories, kind of the moral judgment, the value system that we apply to our day to day, like, oh, I just got upset. I'm such a bad person. I'm always getting upset. Da 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 da. Right? You have this whole story, whereas you can leave it. Just leave it. It was energy. You know, energy changed, moved, expressed itself. Yeah. And so as we get used to leaving it, hello. So as we get used to leaving it, um, we're going to basically be peeling off the onion layers of conditioned, kind of stressful samsara. You can say samsara. Peels away. Samsara isn't. It doesn't disappear from creating enlightenment. Enlightenment comes from peeling away samsara. So in Dzogchen, we have an advantage of a different vantage point. Advantage of. Might use that one in a poem. Yes, advantage of a vantage point. We have the vantage advantage. That's right. So it is, and it seems that way. You slowly reorient yourself into a more spacious part of your mind. Some people call it your true mind. Some people don't want to call it that, in fears of super egos. Um, I'm of the opinion that you can call it what you want as long as you're on the path. Any grasping or clinging to that will be noticed within your awareness. Awareness is very thorough. That's why I favor this path. Well, it's the highest path, so everybody kind of favors it. But that's what stands out to me, is that it's very thorough. It gets psychological and emotional knots that we may never even notice, and that goes for physical and so-called physical, because the physical meets there is no physical, it's all moving energy. And so there are coarse and subtle layers of that. For example, there are subtle winds in your body, there's space, your body is mostly empty space. All that kind of stuff, awareness tends to self harmonize. Okay. That's why in Tsalung, Tibetan Yantra Yoga, also known as Trokor, the eighth, presented in the eighth yana typically, uh, it's concerned with doing actual yoga and using inner heat to basically untie karmic knots or vanish them, however you want to phrase that. But Dzogchen is considered a faster, more effective technique in untying the very same knots that very intense yoga aims to untie. So very interesting there. You can do very intense tumo practices and you still won't have the same resolution as you will have in Dzogchen with the simple awareness practice. Okay, so that's my little rundown, as usual, introduction. And let's see what the text is talking about today. People who have achieved the liberation of the six senses abide in a state of great blissfulness. We can read about the great yogis and yoginis of the past who lived in solitude in mountain caves with virtually nothing. From the dualistic perspective, it may seem that these practitioners must have been lonely and miserable, but in actuality, they were absolutely happy and content. I'd like to verify that. I live up here in the mountains, northern New Mexico, off the grid, off of solar power, and very minimalistic. It feels good as a point of activism too, because we're so hard on the environment right now. It feels good to be mindful of all that water usage, electricity usage, and managing my own waste and things like that. Okay, so it may seem odd how somebody like Milarepa can kind of feel so rich and wealthy, but I think we've all accessed that when we've had a moment in nature of fulfillment, and there's a profound depth to our interactions with this world when we kind of release into this into our enlightenment. So, am I missing something here on the side? Let's see. Okay, let's save that. All right. That's has nothing to do with the text right now. So maybe save that for the open discussion time. Yeah. But you may need to be drinking more water. All right. So don't worry. I'll read it for you in this case. You could just actually sit back and relax. And by the way, this is considered a transmission. I don't usually put that out there because I want it to be casual. I want people to be relaxed. But there are a few things that I ask is that we be respectful as we go through the text because um, it is considered a transmission. And there are a lot of little things that involves that I think most of you don't need to worry about, except one thing is one should be in a kind of meditation almost listening to this, to be distracted or to be interrupting the transmission is usually a no-no. Probably not the best. Okay. So I'm just going to continue here. We can also read about great masters and Mahasiddhis who happened to be quite wealthy and powerful, but this did not make them haughty and proud. Circumstances and status, riches and poverty, what the dualistic mind deems good or bad, high or low, does not change the minds and hearts of realized beings. When we look at their faces, they are always smiling, always joyful, At this point in the text, Patrul Rinpoche quotes from another Dzogchen teaching. So we have intertextual upon intertextual going on here. Very interesting. So Patrul Rinpoche quotes saying, when the objects of the five senses appear, if you do not delude yourself by clinging, the realization of the Buddha is in your heart. Isn't this wonderful? So we're really incorporating the life of our senses. Like if you look with your eyes open right now, there's a life in your seeing. That's what they call the eye consciousness, right? Or the ayatanas too. There's a life in your hearing. There's a life in your feeling and your thinking. It's all living consciousness. And so that's why we can hinge on the nature, which is within all of these, within seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting, thinking, emotions, uh, including the outside, whole outside, everything. So this is what's really cool is that when you recognize the nature of mind, when you rest in awareness, it permeates all this life that's within your senses and it liberates your sense consciousnesses. Yes, if you look at the five wisdoms, if anybody's going that deep, um, you can think of your mind like a coin. On one side is conditioned, kind of dualistic, samsaric mind. On the other side is Dharmakaya, Kuntazampo, the all good mind with the five wisdoms, okay? And so the eight consciousnesses turn into the five wisdoms. They've always been the five wisdoms, but we kind of skew, just like in a dream, we can make pure cognizance into anything. So we skew this pure cognizance into a reality. And that being said, the five senses are considered a creation, as long as they're dualistic with clinging and fixation, they're a creation of our conditioned mind, our fabrications, but they don't have to be. When we just let them be within the nature of mind, then they're sort of all wisdom life, wisdom consciousness, in a sense. And that's when really your experience becomes so much fuller, as a holistic experience. So, in other words, non grasping is Buddhahood. Wow, simple 3 words right there tells you what Buddhahood is. You can still have, engage with this life, you know, on deep levels, enjoy it. That could mean very simple enjoyment down to having a pool party. I don't know. But it's good to begin to liberate these. Yeah. So we do have a question here. MW asking, in this view of the two-sided coin, how do the five Buddha families relate to the five aggregates? Well, that's a good question. The five aggregates would probably be with the eight consciousnesses because Buddha Shakyamuni, remember, said that those are non-self, right? So if we were to go out on a limb here and declare a higher self just for the sake of conventional speaking, we could say the five wisdoms are your true self, right? All you Buddhists out there, please don't chastise me for that. I'm just trying to make it accessible here, okay? Or we can think of one side as conditioned consciousness, the other side of the coin, unconditioned consciousness. All right. So your mind will always have energy. It will always create these realities. It'll always display according to your lucid cognition on a very subtle level. Right? Just like when you dream, it's constructing a reality on a very subtle level there. You don't say, hey, create a ground, create the sky. No, that's happening on a subtle level, just like it is now. But since it's such a subtle level of cognition, we don't think there's a chance that we're creating all the elements. We're like, no way, right? They seem so separate from us. Well, they do so in a dream too. We walk around the whole elemental world in our dream that our mind created. We're walking on top of our mind. So this becomes very interesting in a collective because now your mind's creating reality, my mind's creating reality, and they're obviously not always the same. People have varying degrees of what they assume reality to be, but we do have a collective. We do agree on some stuff so we can navigate. And you probably don't want your whole reality melting away. It'd be very difficult to talk to people and stuff like that. So it's just an agreed upon language, this constructed reality that we have here. It's like an agreed upon language. And with clinging, it becomes a reality that we get stuck to, and we're suffering because of impermanence. These bodies go away and we think that's the end because we get attached to these dualistic constructs. But indeed it's not the end. Otherwise, suicide would probably be more of an option, but many people know in their hearts that it's not over if you commit suicide and things like that. I'm sorry to bring up a sensitive topic, but this is a great example of how the thoughts can lead us to the most extreme things, including taking our precious life. And I understand that. I mean, I've had those thoughts too. The thoughts can be maddening, right? And they can be so, you just want it all to end, and there's no way for it to end, probably because you haven't met with the awareness nature. That is the way to end it. That is the ultimate bridge to jump off of. You jump into awareness and you won't have to deal with any of this stuff anymore, right? But your mind is always going to have a display of energy. It's just whether you have that grasping, that fixation into that energy or not, right? Hopefully that's a okay way of explaining it. Yes, if you want to ask another question, please. If it's related to the text, yeah, I don't mind. Other questions maybe we'll do during open discussion.
Thank you. So I've been reading about the five Buddha families recently, and it's really interesting because they're connected to a lot of different concepts. And yes, it's all conceptual, but there's interesting there's interesting ways that it connects back to the practice, because in the practice we're seeing the five skandhas, and part of the practice is watching the five skandhas. How could you go possibly into a little bit more detail on how the Buddhas relate to the skandhas? Because I have a list here. So Vairochana would relate to form, Vajrasapta would relate to consciousness, Ratnasambhava would be feeling, Amitabha would be perception, and Amoghasiddhi would be formations. Uh, so would love any words of insight on how those Buddhas relate to the skandhas, and what's the action of the Buddha on the skandha?
Yeah, well, instead of the Buddha names, which is good and everything, it's good to understand what the five wisdoms are. They're also known as the five awarenesses. So, for example, with Ratna Sambhava, you have the wisdom of equality, right? Which normally pride would go in there, and one of the aggregates in your enumeration is which one? There are different Buddha families, and there are different correlations with the aggregates. So
This one says Ratnasambhava is pride, wisdom of equality, and feeling.
feeling. Okay, so you can do that with each of the Buddha families, like Amitabha, desire, discernment, and I imagine form. I don't know. I don't know
Here,
what. Yeah.
yeah, this particular list says perception, but I don't
Okay.
know. Hmm.
Yeah. So you'll want to correspond that with desire. So desire and perception are on one side of the coin, and then the wisdom of discernment is on the other side of the coin. All right. So just like that with everything, um, ignorance will be on one side of the coin, and the wisdom of Dharmadhatu will be on the other side of that coin. Everything has its kind of flip side.
I see. Starting to see
And
a little.
Mocha City is associated, I think, with jealousy and all accomplishing wisdom, right?
Yes.
So that'll also have its kind of flip side there.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
By the way, my mom's gonna get. She was also into Mocha City for a little while, so I asked her to get those teachings she was into for you. Okay, she just has been working a lot, so she hasn't been able to get them just yet.
Oh, that's amazing, and thank you for asking her. And that's very generous of her.
Yeah. Yeah, people have these draws towards certain Buddha families sometimes. I think it's really interesting. And there's a whole teaching about that too, about why you might be drawn to certain Buddha families.
Oh yeah,
Have you heard of those?
very briefly, and not at all in detail.
I think Lama Tsocho Malion goes into those pretty well.
I see. I see.
Hmm. I
Amoga
might be able
Siddhi.
to.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I might be able to find you those resources as well from, I think it was Lama Tsotrem Alyon. The five Buddha families are a topic that I wish I could spend more time on. I probably will in my life. They're very, very interesting and they go back so far. Actually, Tara and the five Buddha families um, go back very, very far uh,
Mhm.
historically.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just depending on the problem one is working on. Uh, these come into play. So yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so we'll get back, do a little bit more exploration here of the text. So it says, for this reason, the great master Tilopa gave this final teaching to his foremost disciple, Naropa. Son, appearances do not bind you, clinging binds you. Therefore, cut your clinging. Now, let me just say that recognizing awareness cuts that clinging for you. It cuts it at the deepest levels that you haven't even seen that you're clinging at. Because you're hinging, it's just like this whole world was made out of water. Your thoughts made out of water. Your emotions are a different type of water. Your body is a type of water, and all the elements are types of water. Well, if you recognize wetness, then you've recognized the nature of all of those. That makes sense, right? So everything's not water, everything's mind. So we recognize what we call awareness, or what's underneath that word, awareness. We recognize that this pure presence that's here right now is so simple. Naropa's sister Naguma said so simple that many people will not see it. But this is the very, and then you might have thoughts again, but that's within your awareness. And you don't have to try to be aware. You can't turn it off, you can't turn it on. It's just a pure present cognizance. It's everywhere and nowhere. And so that's why it liberates on the deepest levels like that. All these very subtle clinging that we have. Okay, very powerful stuff. So, and in the same way, the great master Padampa Sangye, as well as his student, the wisdom Dakini Machik Lobdran, said, if you recognize the mistakes of grasping and are able to abide in the natural state, then whatever thoughts come are themselves the meditation. Isn't that amazing? You have Padampa Sangye and Machik Lobdran being quoted here. I mean, this text is packed with wisdom. Those are great chud masters, by the way. I was just mentioning how chud with the drum and the bell. You might be able to see my two drums back there, but either way, it has a big old drum that you use in your hand, and you do the bell. Actually, it's this hand, but I can't move my hand because Kitty will be upset with me. So, but you do these at the same time and do very lovely practices, sadhanas that are considered ati yoga, and they're kind of shamanic. They're really awesome. And we do have a few chud videos. I think we have at least one on the channel. So let's see here. Yeah, it says thoughts themselves are meditation because you're starting to see how your mind works. You're starting to see what kind of thoughts you have, when you get stuck on them, when they pull you into action, when they make you jealous, when they make you prideful, when they keep you ignorant. Yeah, we can see our thoughts doing this. So that seeing is enough. It's almost like you could stare at your car engine and just by looking at it, it fixes itself. Imagine. You would never have to go to the mechanic again. You just pop open your hood, look at your engine, and it fixes itself. Well, unfortunately, cars aren't like our minds. Our minds are like that. It will self-resolve. That's what they call self-liberation, okay? And that's why Gaurav Dorje says, have confidence in one thing and one thing only, the self-liberation of thoughts. So this means that even when the most powerful negative emotions rise up within your mind, if you do not cling to them, they are wisdom. The most powerful emotion. Keep that in mind here, everybody, when you're going so hard on yourself and you're telling yourself you're not a practitioner or something like that. Even when powerful negative emotions arise, it's fine. It's just raw energy. Let yourself feel that, right? But if you cling to it, you write a story about it, then you're going to get back into this whole conditioned world. So, in a single voice, all the great Dzogchen masters say to abide in the view, and when thoughts arise, do not follow or reject them. Let thoughts come, let thoughts go, and do not change, structure, or establish anything. Thoughts do not require any actions on your part. Thoughts are emptiness appearance, transparent, unimpeded, and fresh. Good and bad, hope and fear, accepting and rejecting are the creations of dualistic mind. They are conceptions and delusions. All right, I just want to say good and bad, hope and fear. A lot of this is in our culture. We have these cultures that are really religious. They have religious foundations and Judeo-Christian found or Abrahamic, right? Whether it's Islamic, whether it's Christian, whether it's Jewish. Uh, we have a lot of laws right now, a lot of value systems, good and bad value systems based on these religions, and maybe Buddhism too, and Buddhism in some countries too. But this keeps us very binary. You see, maybe think of the horse farmer, the story of the horse farmer, right? If you're having a hard time understanding how things could be beyond good and bad, and not necessarily constrained to that binary construct. And hope and fear is another one. They just tend to clog things up. Having hope for something, it tends to clog it up. I don't have a problem with the true essence of any religion. The question was, I thought you liked Christianity. I especially appreciate the Christian mystics and the Gnostic texts. What I don't appreciate is the Roman rewrite and the 27 books that were included in the Bible to make the New Testament. And I don't appreciate the violence and inbreeding and child abuse that's in the Old Testament, as well as animal abuse and the abuse of homosexuals and all kinds of stuff like that. That's the type of stuff I can't really get on board with. Sorry. It sucks, that has to be like that. But I do think there's some truth, just like in Scientology, where they have a little bit of truth and a whole lot of bull crap. Like Scientology was based on something that actually works, clearing. It's called clearing. You think of everything, all your memories from the time you were born until now, and from now to the time you were born, you go back and forth like that until you can do it without getting emotional upheaval. That's a very real technique. By the way, it's an ancient technique. L. Ron Hubbard did not invent that technique, okay, but capitalized on it in a serious way, and now they have all kinds of crazy beliefs in Scientology. Hopefully, they won't come after us for that critique. But I mean, to me, it's out there, okay. So anyway, I'm gonna. Was there another comment here? I think another problem is Christians tend to use logic on why those bad things happen when in reality those are just theories. Yeah, there's all kinds of apologetics and justification for these kinds of things. But for example, well, I won't really get into critiquing religions right now. I tend to be okay. Like if you're a Christian, like I totally respect that in the highest way. But if you want to have an honest debate, a friendly debate about Christianity, then I will take you up on that. So, anyway, I'm going to finish the paragraph here, okay? So it says the true nature of mind is beyond conception and without delusion. It is called the absolute state or Dharmakaya. If you are able to abide in this state effortlessly and free from subject and object, you are at the heart of the true nature and have obtained the heart of enlightenment. Yeah, and I want to say again, if you we do this looking at our mind, we look back at the one who's thinking, we rest the seventh egoic consciousness into the presence. So you have touched enlightenment. That's why you feel so present. That's why people who come to this group or hear the YouTube videos, they feel something. It's because we're actually dealing with actual enlightenment here. All right. I don't know how else to put that. This is the real thing. Okay. And yes, you're accessing that, which is amazing. And it's not like you just randomly came across Dzogchen. Previously in the text we read that you must have been very, very compassionate. You must have done something or been a yogi or something like that, and that's why you met back with these teachings. It's not coincidental. So abide in this great Dzogchen state and reactivate your beautiful motivation of bodhicitta and devotion, and the universe will appear as a magic show, a dream, a mirage. Presently, due to our habitual clinging and dualistic conceptions, we have a strong sense of solidity, separation, and blockage. When we release all clinging, we will see everything as open, interconnected, and unobstructed. Yeah, that's another beautiful part of all this. There's a beautiful nexus that we start to allow of interconnectivity that has an ineffable quality to it. It's really beyond description what you're coming into here. So, what happens to the yogis and yoginis who practice and actualize this Dzogchen teaching? By the way, I want to say if anybody is in the middle there, not identifying as masculine or feminine, I totally understand that. You could probably just say yogis. I use yogis as a general genderless term. So I know sometimes they get a little gender binary in these texts, but you can definitely use yogi as a neutral term. So their loving kindness will become enormous. Their compassion will become unconditional. Their wisdom will be inconceivable. When we read about their life stories, we can see that many Dzogchen masters did not go to monastic colleges or engage in very much intellectual study. Simply by meditating on the absolute state, they spontaneously became great scholars. Yes, and this is true of Dudjom Rinpoche, uh, the recent one, the late Dudjom Rinpoche, um, Jig Troll, Dudjom, uh, Tuku Organ Rinpoche, Long Chimpa. Many of these masters, they just became like prodigies in the face of enlightenment. And that's what happens. Your creativity just opens up. And there are many, many yogic lineages that are non monastic. So don't think that you have to become a monastic for Dzogchen, okay? So their songs of realization are testaments to their profound mastery of the teachings. As your Dzogchen practice develops, your realization, wisdom, and intelligence grow, and your concern, care, and ability to help others also grow. Right? I totally agree with that. It's amazing. The universe becomes magnificent. It has always been this way, and now you see it. You no longer hope to go to a pure land in the future to find nirvana. You no longer fear staying in samsara. Nirvana and samsara have merged into a single beautiful natural state. When you have this realization, which is like sunlight dawning in the sky, rays, beams, and brilliant colors shine everywhere. When you discover the nature of your own mind, the universe unveils its glory to you. Okay, I think we can pause there. Thank you so much, everybody, once again for your wonderful presence here, keeping this whole Dzogchen movement going and accessible and alive. I appreciate you so much. And those of you who are showing love on YouTube on the videos there, commenting and all that. I also appreciate that connection. Um, every single authentic follower on there, or subscriber, I should say, not followers, um, you all mean something. You're not just bots or just another number. Um, so, my appreciation as usual, and deep bow to you practitioners for your practice.